Well, this is crazy, isn't it? The Mandelbulb 3D software is actually extending to you and me as artists the ability to tweak or fine-tune or manage some of the properties that go into calculations that are involved with the software rendering your image. All right, and so like we talked about, you know, it's all ray tracing related. It's old style, and I have found that if I go up and I say, let me read up on this Mandelbulb ray tracing, nobody seems to have written a very extensive description, technical description of the ray tracing methodology that the Mandelbulb 3D software uses. It seems to be like the technology is lost to time to fully understand what the developer or developers were thinking and what their technology knowledge was at the time, so how they utilize ray tracing. Now, you can get a pretty good sense of what they're doing by opening up their software and looking at the internal code, which we can do. And it's one of the beautiful things about the Mandelbulb 3D software. The software, what we call source code, is not hidden and locked up and kept a big secret. At some point in one of the future sessions, we'll crack into and I'll show you what that code looks like, what the Mandelbulb 3D source code looks like. It's pretty interesting. Now, so we don't really know precisely what this ray tracing methodology is, but we do have some control over it because they extended certain properties out to the user. And probably most users don't understand what is going on behind the scenes, but you can get a visual as to what these various property adjustments can be. Now let's take a look at this. Let's focus on this DE stop, this 1.5. And as I was describing in an earlier session, last session, all right, it's a way for us to be able to modify or fudge or tweak where that ray supposedly hits that object in the scene. And so the DE stop, and here's the key, here's a key phrase for you. For the purposes of developing a Mandelbulb 3D image, whether that image goes out to be a still or an animation, it still applies to either. That DE stop is allowing you to avoid oversampling or to minimize oversampling. And oversampling is really, the definition of oversampling is that it got the position a little wrong. The end result is typically white pixels because the internal calculation doesn't quite know what to do with that ray. The ray failed, okay? All right. Or you might get a black pixel from that failed ray. All right, so let's see if we can visualize what all this stuff looks like. Now, all right, in order for me to do this, I want to be able to see what this what various settings of this DE stop will do for me. There's a couple ways I can do it, actually. If I go back to the navigator here in this miscellaneous panel here, all right, I've got a DE stop on this particular scene of 1.5, you know, and if I do something like that, oh my God, look at this. See this? Look how bad that is. I have an idea. This is a 3 formula alternating environment here with a rather complex graphic, and it's going to be hard for us to really visualize what this DE stop does for us. So I'm going to trash this, and I'm going to go with a really simple fractal with one formula. Now I've already saved it and everything. I'm okay. I'm just going to go ahead and close the application. I'm going to restart it again, and I'm going to let it settle down here. Okay, and I'm going to calculate that. There is a very simple one formula Mandelbulb fractal. Here we go. So I've got no formulas assigned anywhere here. All right, one formula. Let me get the navigator started up. All right, let me pull the properties over. Okay. Let's open up the window here so we have everything in front of us. Open up miscellaneous. Now I've got a DE stop here of 1. All right, DE stop over here under calculations of 1.0. Now, if I take and crank this DE stop value up, you see what happened? See what happened to my image? I crank this DE stop up to 5.1. Now effectively what that means is that I have told the ray tracing algorithm in the software to stop the ray at about 5 pixel widths from the object. Boom. I'm going to exaggerate it. I mean, obviously that's 5 pixels. I'm just going to exaggerate it. All right. Let's say that at a DE stop of 1, let's call that 1. All right. I get a fairly good detail on my rendered Mandelbulb, even on the navigator. If I crank this up to 5.19, do something like that. Now you see how everything got really soft, because I have adjusted this DE stop so far out that the ray can't possibly be accurate. Can't possibly be. I've got it so far out. So, I mean, maybe that's the effect that you want. I mean, why not? But that is a DE stop example. I'm going to put this back to 1. All right, now that's one place to change your DE stop for testing purposes. Another place is to do it over here. I'm going to put this up to 800. All right, so we can get a little bit better picture. Now let's put this, I'm going to make that DE stop 5, recalculate. You see I have a similar effect that what I had over here when I messed with it here. The difference is that over here I can test it before I send it, before I commit it over here in May. Now when I changed it over here, what is that, 5.19? 19615, calculate, okay, all right, close, but there's some other things involved here that are not involved here. So what I've done here with the navigator, I've sort of like tested the DE stop, and over here, and I could send it over if I wanted to, like we talked about in a previous session, but over here I can really fudge with it. I can say, give me a DE stop of 2. Well, enter doesn't work. DE stop of 2. Give me a DE stop of 1. Calculate. Give me a DE stop of 0.5. Calculate. See how the detail is improving? Let me do this. Let me get the, I'm going to render this as out at 1920 by 1080. That's 2K. All right, I'm going to just pull over here where we can see it all nice. All right, there's a DE stop of 0.5. Okay, I've basically said, look, you know, don't fudge the ray hit anymore. All right, let the ray get as close as it can to the object and take that value and render it. Now, all right, now if I do let's do a DE stop of 5, because I made it nice and close. You see, I've got a lot of the ray wasn't able to get close enough to the object, all right, to give me a decent look. Now, if I do let's do a DE stop of 2, just for comparison now. We're trying to understand what this DE stop does. We don't really care how it does it as artists. We care what it does and how it impacts the quality of our art. That was a DE stop of 2, DE stop of 1, and a DE stop of, let's get crazy, 0.1. Now, I'll tell you what, we're gonna end this session right here, but I'm gonna leave my interface exactly the way it is. When we come back, we're gonna continue to mess around with this DE stop and see how it impacts our image. And the next session, I think you're gonna find that very interesting, and you're also gonna find it at a key. What you're gonna learn the next session will be key to getting the maximum quality out of the Mandelbulb 3D software with a decent render time. I'll see you in the next session.